Welcome back to another recording of the Elevate Media Podcast. I'm Chris Anderson, your host. Today we're going to be diving into the journey of Scott Joseph. He's founded and been a part of multiple businesses. He's the host, and I love this podcast name, the Business Bourbon and Cigars Leadership Retreats and Podcasts. So he's done a lot in the business world, auto, marketing, everything you can think of. So we're excited to have him on to dive into his journey and just learn from him. So Scott, welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast.
Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Looking forward to diving into your journey. I mean, you started, I believe, in auto dealerships and worked your way up to starting your J&L Marketing company. You know, what was that like, that transition from going from like kind of a corporate job?
Actually, it was reversed.
Okay.
It's reversed. So just long story short, always wanted to be in the auto business. My dad was selling vacuums at Sears and got into selling cars, and then eventually worked his way up to where he was running a store. And so our lifestyle changed. And at this point, I'm very impressionable. I'm a young kid, then going up into, high school, college age, and our lifestyle changed dramatically because the auto industry provided him a level of income that we just probably didn't even think about prior to that. And, so you just enjoy some of the conveniences and comforts that come along with that. And so I always wanted to get into auto, and my path just took me to the agency path first, which allowed me to make the money to buy the store, eventually buy the store.
Well, that's still, so, you've done all that. I mean, so you had the agency and then bought the dealership, built it up successfully, growing value of over 500,000%, if I remember reading that correctly, into your podcast, your retreats, and now the founder of Me Plus Ultra. Were you always entrepreneurial? Was it just a lifestyle you wanted? What kind of got you super intrigued to kind of owning and running and founding the businesses?
I think I've always wanted to do my own thing. I mentioned that I wanted to get into auto. The plan was never to really buy my own stores. The plan was to run it. And so I think if you're going to run a business, you still have to have an entrepreneurial, mindset that comes with that. So I never envisioned myself just doing some type of 9-to-5. And so I guess the answer to your question is, I think I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me.
Sure. So, you've done that. You've had the marketing agency, now the founder of Me Plus Ultra. Obviously entrepreneurship is not easy. It can be simple, but it's definitely not easy. Thinking back on your journey, is there a moment in time you remember was like a super critical, crucial moment of like make or break? Like, maybe I shouldn't do this, but you stuck with it, or something you had to overcome that was really big?
Well, I think the only time I thought maybe I shouldn't do this would have had to been with J&L Marketing right out of the gate, 3 or 4 months in, because I put every penny I had that I saved up into it, and it wasn't gaining as much traction initially as I thought it was, or, it's never as easy as you play it out in your head.
Right.
And I was only 22 when I started it.
Wow.
So I was probably naive to what it would actually take. I had to grind. I worked really hard. I just felt like the success would come a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So I think maybe there was a stretch there where I may have thought, is this the right path? But not in a serious way. I think I always felt like the momentum. Normal stuff. Yeah. I never actually ever thought this isn't for me. Now, I will say later in life, I bought the dealerships. I'm fortunate that, I through J&L Marketing, we sold our core business was automotive. So I was very familiar with what it took to have a successful store and to really grow it. And so I knew I needed to get a managing partner on board that was going to be there for the day-to-day operations, and he does a phenomenal job. I joke with him all the time. This is the easiest business I've ever been a part of, mainly because he does all the heavy lifting, right? And he's just a phenomenal partner. But with the agency, there was a stretch. I think maybe when we started doing our pivot, we still do direct mail, but 85% of all our revenue from that agency's all paid media, digital marketing. And I think when we went through that pivot, there was a 2-year, 3-year stretch where I really doubted, do I still have what it takes as it relates to this agency to keep moving forward? I think for where you're going with that question, I think that would probably be the closest time where those thoughts creeped in a little bit.
Sure. What got you past that and made you realize, okay, we're going to continue this? And because there's always a time where you can, change direction, pivot, let something go, but you kept with it. So what was that kind of moment for you?
Well, at this stage in my life, when this was happening, the agency had already been around for 15, 20 years, wow, and had done very well. Mm-hmm. The dealerships are all cranking.
Yeah.
So if I'm being true to myself and I'm doing a true self-assessment here, I don't know, is it related to the agency if I still had that fire to relearn what I needed to learn and start over from a product standpoint. I understood I can go out today and I can get all kinds of appointments for our sales team and our president because I know enough to get that done. Yeah. And I believe in what we're doing. But if I had to explain to someone that actually knows digital marketing what they needed to do, I couldn't do that. I rely on the team here, right?
Sure.
And so I think there was a period of time there where I was responsible for the day-to-day operations of J&L Marketing. I was fortunate enough, I sat back and I said, why am I allowing this to frustrate me, bring me down to where it's not enjoyable for me? It's some of the things that used to excite me had become mundane as it related to the agency. I said, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. The dealership world brings me no headaches. Yeah. So what's the difference? I said, well, the difference is I've got a managing partner that's involved more than I am, and I don't get in his way. And I was getting in the way that I was having. With J&L, I had a president, but I had a foot in and a foot out. Mm-hmm. And he's got his way of running things, and I have mine. And I think we got along great, but I was getting in his way. And you can't have two people running the ship. And so I sat back and I said, well, the problem is me. And so I stepped aside and let him go full steam ahead, and it was almost instant.
That's awesome. And that's a lot, isn't that the truth though? The problem is me. I feel like most of the time our problems come from internal, from ourselves.
That's correct. Well, every entrepreneur, especially if they're successful, at some point, there's going to be a time where it might be time to move on because you've grown past it. Mm-hmm. And I think that time had come for me with what I'm doing now on Me Plus Ultra. I'm working harder today. I mean, I got to go all the way back into the 90s to find the same type of grind that I've got going on today, but it doesn't feel like a grind to me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm enjoying it. All the things that we talk about with entrepreneurs, especially newer ones, working through the night, sometimes no sleep, sometimes just a couple hours. I don't have to do that, but it doesn't, like, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
And it brings me a lot of joy doing what I'm doing now. So I think I just lost that with what I was doing, and it was time to move on, but I delayed it because I think sometimes ego gets in the way. Especially there's a lot of people that have become successful and they think they don't really have comfort zones and they're risk takers and things like that. And what happened was I had achieved more than I thought I would when I first started in my entrepreneurial journey, and I got comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was time to move on and start something else. But I think there's an ego play that comes in, and you start to wonder, can I do it again? Especially at this stage of my career, do I want to do it again? Right. So that's where it's really important. If you're going to make that change and pivot to something else, you really got to make sure it's the right thing. Because I got to tell you, if this was not the right thing, what I've done now on the mastermind group, it would not be successful.
Yeah, because I think it would be too hard. You almost have like, the old saying, the Cherokee, two wolves inside fighting. They're fighting one another, and he asks which one wins, and the head honcho was like the one you feed, and it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're doing one thing, but you're like mindset and stuff's against it, like they're battling each other. And so like I tell people when I started Elevate, like I didn't want to do editing, I didn't want to, because we started with just video podcasts, and I do full video production, but I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I don't like doing all the time it is, until I changed my mindset of like, what's the benefit to our clients? Like, how does this help them?
Yep.
Like when I made that shift in my mindset, I saw it different. My perspective changed, and I enjoyed it more because I knew what the impact we were doing, what I was doing back when I started by myself was having on those companies. So, and that's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily think about, is having those battles, like, and having to change those mindsets and make sure they're sometimes don't want to let go of what they started to create something new because they felt like failure.
Well, J&L Marketing's been around now 30 plus years, since 91. And so, but at this stage, right, where I started to feel this inside, let's say at the 25 year mark, and make no mistake, this was, I say the tough part was a 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah.
But what I was battling internally is probably more of a 10-year period, right? Because I just started Me Plus Ultra last October.
Okay.
So I had been doing the business, bourbon, and cigar leadership retreats for a few years prior to that. So which is kind of started getting me into this direction of, wow, I really love this. But towards the end of my true involvement in the day-to-day operations of, say, J&L Marketing, you're not happy. You're headed down the wrong path. And so a lot of times you don't want to admit to yourself that this is no longer my thing. This is no longer what I should be doing.
Yep.
You don't want to admit that. So what you say is, we're not growing fast enough. I've got to grow more. So you start thinking of ways to stay involved. And it must be that I'm just not happy with the status quo or where we've plateaued to. I need more of it. And quite honestly, the more you get, the more miserable you become.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's a weird dynamic. And so I was fortunate, and quite honestly, I'll tell you how I made the switch. I told you the self-assessment of, that's the simple approach. But, with the agency, I had a podcast called Move, Crush, Count. Okay. I had a person reach out to me on LinkedIn, and she was over in London, and she was trying to sell me because she worked specifically with men between the ages of, like, say, 45 to 55 years old, who were CEOs or owners of their own business, who were in a similar spot, who felt a little stuck. And, I'm like, no, I'm not interested. I never buy like that and it was like she committed the cardinal sin against me, which is connect and then send me that.
Right.
But she phrased it in a way that grabbed my attention. It did grab my attention, and it was hitting where I was.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what? Everybody, we all think everyone's just like us, right? So I thought this might be a good podcast for my show. So I brought her on the show, and I was streaming that show live, actually, and then recorded it and dropped it later.
Yeah.
But my wife was watching the show, and I came home and I said, "Did you watch the show?" And she goes, "Yeah. What did you think?" And I said, "Something tells me I need to work with her." And so my wife was like, "Yes," because she could tell.
Wow.
right? Our wives, our spouses, they know.
Yeah.
She goes, yeah, I think you should. And so I started working with her online. Jay Tepley is her name, by the way. I'll give her a quick plug. And we were making progress online a couple times a month. But I'm very, I get distracted easily.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the first thing is she goes, we need like 10 to 12 days just uninterrupted time all day long. And so we actually took a trip to Costa Rica. My wife gave me permission to do this, actually. And I mean, we woke up, I woke up 5:30, did my exercise stuff. Then then met her for breakfast. And I got to tell you, I mean, it was bell to bell. It was exhausting working on myself mentally. But I walked out of that clear. I came out with I knew what I wanted to do. I then came back, and in 3 days, I had my business plan for Me Plus Ultra done. Man, I was excited about it, and that's how it happened.
That's awesome. I think it's important to take those like internal assessments. Sometimes I think, especially for those listening who are early on in their business, they're wearing a lot of hats, doing it all themselves. It can feel overwhelming, but I think finding a moment just to reconnect with yourself and your mind and make sure you're, because I mean there are sleepless nights, there are sacrifices you have to make to have this success, and so taking time to have those moments are important as you're building it. Because like with Elevate, like we're young still. I started in 2021, and we've had growth. Obviously, I'm a little impatient, so I'd like to be a little bit faster, a little bit farther along. But it's been, fantastic to see the growth, and super blessed to like started with me doing everything and being able to have now a team of contracted employees doing things, so I don't have to do everything, and start to pick up even more momentum and just trying to keep that going. But even now, it's like I've learned to be able to take, maybe a day and hang with my two little ones who are just under 3 and about to turn 1. And so, and having that recharge in those moments to just kind of refresh, because that's what it's about, right? I mean, for me, entrepreneurship is to be able to have that. Like, that's what I want. And so if I'm not doing it now, I mean, that was the whole point all along.
So part of what I did down in my trip with her is she made me write a personal mission statement. And one of the things, you just brought this up and trying to find that balance. And when you're, by the way, you're in your first 3-4 years here, 2-3 years, it's hard to find that balance. And I'm very mindful of the balance that's required between the comforts and the conveniences I enjoy now, because I've been in business a long time, done well. And the growth that's needed to actually live the mission that I have for myself. So to live my purpose, first off, I believe in creating your own purpose, but to live a life that's fulfilling, it requires growth. It requires time. It requires sacrifices. But I'm very mindful of making sure I'm not going to give up the things I now enjoy, right? And so there's that balance. I'm curious for you, like, what so 21, that's coming right off the heels of COVID, right? And I don't know when you started in 21, so I don't know if it's like, all right, the lockdowns and the lockouts and the social stuff is kind of past now, and we're
into 2021. I quit my job in 2020 to try to figure out how to start a business. So that was a great time. And then 2020 kind of, faith is a big part of me. Just heard God saying, hey, like, look, this is what I've been giving you, like, lean into it. And that's what I did. And it's been growth since. But into 2021.
So that's awesome. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah. And like having that, and that was a big thing. Like I always call a harmony, because I feel like there's no balance in it all. You just kind of have to mesh it together as best you can. And like, but still, like, and I heard, you probably know Alex Hormozy, or have heard of him. If not, he's just big in the coaching marketing space. He said, like, you're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to miss ballets. You're going to have to miss soccer games. And I'm like, like, no. I said, that's one thing I won't sacrifice, because that's like the reason I'm doing this. Yes, I'll sacrifice, a workout every now and then, or sleep some hours. But like, you have to remember, like, you have to choose what you'll sacrifice.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You are sacrificing something, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to the soccer game, you're sacrificing that potential sale or whatever it might be, that project getting done sooner, or whatever it would be. There's always a sacrifice, and I think in the end you have to do. There's a difference between choosing correctly, because that is your purpose. That's what fulfills you.
Yep.
Versus the entrepreneur that's not that successful and says they're choosing to do that, and really it's more about just justifying why they're not growing or succeeding. There is a difference in one is truthful, one is not.
Right.
So I think I applaud you for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because I know I could probably be farther along in profit, revenue, all that growth if I was to spend 24 hours a day every day on business. I know that, but then my relationship with my wife and my kids aren't what they are, and that's more important to me. And so I'll slow down the success just a little bit to be able to have that still. And that's just personal. Some people don't agree with that, but that's all right. So for you, like, what was something like, do you have now obviously you've been doing this a long time. Did you have anything like that when you started, though, like a non-negotiable, like this, I'm not going to sacrifice this, or were you kind of all in? I know you're younger, 22. I'm 33, so a little bit different in age, but
I am not naive or foolish to think that there were advantages that I had, and it's the reason I started at 22.
Sure.
I was still living at home. Talk about not having all the. So the big advantage I had starting at 22 was you're a little bit more fearless, but it's easy to be fearless when you're living at home. You don't have the overhead or expenses or the responsibilities that someone like yourself, who might be 30, married, kids, probably a mortgage, whatever it might be, right? I did not have that. And I did not have a wife at the time. I had me. And it was just gung-ho. And so it's easier to do that. I feel like I thought I was a risk taker, but as I look back, that's not a risk. That's just, yeah.
Oh yeah. Cause man, I look back at my 2020, we didn't have kids yet. We were about to be pregnant because he was born in 2021, like a month before I started Elevate, but COVID hit, and it was like, I was bringing most of the revenue, and we student loans and house payment and stuff like that. And it's like, and then the kids were born, and it's like, whoa,
yeah,
you gotta keep going.
Those are different decisions.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I can't take a bigger risk and stuff. I mean, I still take some, but yeah, it's like if you were just talking to someone starting out, they're maybe in the 9-to-5 still, and they have a side hustle they're trying to build. How do you guide them, or what or motivation do you give them? Because that's a lot too, having a 9-to-5 and family and trying to build a side hustle that become full time. Like, how do you motivate them to keep going forward when things are hard?
I think you have to be you have to understand this. If you're building a company, it doesn't really matter how good your product is. That all matters.
Yeah.
But none of that matters if you can't sell it.
Yeah.
And so the other advantage I had, I came from the auto industry, and I felt like I knew, people came to me and say, well, you don't know anything about running a business. All right. My dad told me, you'll be back here, because I was working with him at the store, and you'll be back here in 3 months.
Mm.
All right. And people ask me, well, how are you going to do this? And I said, I can sell. I can learn the rest.
Yeah.
Right. I need to sell, and I knew the importance of taking care of my client. Right. And, the terms client experience and all that type of stuff wasn't, but I understood the importance of retaining my client and re-signing them. And back then it wasn't a reoccurring revenue model. When I first started this, I was starting over every month, because that's the business I came from, in the auto business. I didn't understand the reoccurring revenue model. So selling was a focal point. And quite honestly, if I go back into those first 10 years of J&L Marketing, we were a sales organization disguised as a marketing company. We had rules, and I had things that I had set up that gave us clear advantages over people we competed against. But make no mistake about it, we were successful because our sales team was just rock solid.
Yeah.
We trained them consistently. We got lucky in the sense that we had processes. Without knowing I had to set up processes, I worked out basically marketing and sales processes. Looking back, I'm like, oh, that worked. No wonder we were doing this, right? No wonder we were retaining and re-signing clients. Constantly worked on the product side, but if we had not had those systems in place from a sales and marketing thing up front, would not have mattered. And so if someone's starting off and they've got a good idea, if they can't sell it, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So the first thing I would encourage them to do is if they can't sell, they might want to consider partnering up with someone who can.
Yeah.
Because if nothing gets sold, you have no business.
So where would you suggest, like, where do you have someone you learn from for sales now that you listen to? Where could people go?
So it's always funny, right? Do you interview salespeople?
Some, yeah.
All right. I mean, one of the most common things I'd hear when I would interview people, whether it's right out of school, younger salespeople, maybe they don't have a lot of experience. And keep in mind, when I'm starting the company, that's what I'm attracting. I'm not attracting the guy that's got 5 to 10 years of experience. They're not going to work for a startup and I'm 22 years old. Maybe that's a limiting belief on my end. Once I had a proof of concept within the first couple years and people were making money, then I was able to, they were coming to me. Yeah. But initially that wasn't the case. And the most common thing is, well, I'm a people person. What does that mean? That doesn't matter. People, you can create great relationships and you can be a people person. That doesn't mean you can sell. Right. And so the answer to your question is, in the first couple of years, I was exposed to Anthony Robbins.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And in about year 3, I had a couple good core salespeople doing all right. They're making money. But we finally had an opportunity to bid on something and sell somebody for one of the manufacturers.
Cool.
And I want to say it was Toyota at the time. And this would have probably, this one deal could have tripled our entire revenue for the year at that point.
Yeah.
We didn't get the deal.
Okay.
And I remember asking them after the fact, I wanted to know why. And they said they did not feel we were big enough to handle that account or that project or campaign at the time.
Yep.
And I knew who got the deal, and I knew we were a better company, and I knew we would have produced better results.
Yep.
So I knew it wasn't that. It was that we couldn't sell it. We weren't as good at selling our solution in a way that made them feel confident in us that it could happen. At least not as good as the company that got the deal.
Right.
And so I had been exposed to Tony Robbins, and I did some workshops and some things like that and read a couple books. I loved his foundational selling model in the sense that it's more psychology based. It's not just this, standard stuff.
Yeah.
And so I found a company out of Chicago that facilitated a lot of his sales. It was very specific to sales training. I took our people up there. They loved it. And then you come back and you try to practice it, right? You try to do it.
Yeah.
And you're not like, you get it conceptually, but until you really start practicing it and get it to where it's like breathing to you, where it's subconscious, you're not that good at it. Right. And so I convinced the company up there to sell me the rights to be able to, I bought the tapes, and I had this sales team every single month, the same videotapes. We would go literally once a month, Thursday, 9 a.m. to midnight. And that was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 straight days of marathoning the same videotapes, the same role plays, the same over. And to the point after 2 years, the sales team was making good money and they had enough more say. I was going to listen to them. And they were like, we can't listen to any more Tony Robbins stories, especially the same ones. So eventually that went away. But I've got people that if I talk to those same salespeople now, they say things, it's instinctive to them. They became so good.
Yeah.
And that's why I say we became we were a true sales organization, which allowed me to put my focus on constantly evolving the products, the service we were providing, right? The sales team, I didn't even have a sales manager. They were that good. I didn't have to motivate them. It was an internal drive. So there were things we did that I didn't have a big strategy and plan in place prior to all that, but I paid attention to the market. I paid attention to what our clients were saying, and I was willing to adjust quickly to satisfy those needs. And when I say clients, I'm also talking about internal people. Our internal sales team and our internal people, hey, we need to do this. Our clients are saying this, we should do this. So that drives innovation in terms of your product and your service. And at the same time, I'm listening to them like, what's it going to take to motivate and inspire them and incentivize them to want more and get more? There was a turning point one time. We did a big pay plan change, and that never goes, it never goes over well.
Right.
But it had to happen. And I remember our top rep at the time said, and this is another lesson I learned, by the way.
Yeah.
He goes, here's why I don't like it. But if you would do this, I'm telling you right now, I could. He was pumped about that. And it was a change that made sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will do that. And I'm going to tell you something. Here's what happened. Here's the lesson learned. I didn't have to sell the rest of the team. He did it.
Yeah.
It's his idea.
Yeah.
He sold the whole team on this thing, and our volume increased 50% in 1 year. All right. And we didn't do anything other than that change, that pay plan change. So I had the big change, but because of this one move, they were able to do things that not only helped the customer, but allowed them to make a lot more money too.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden they were like, I had guys staying until 7, 8, 9. These Guys 20 to 26 years old, making high six figures without a manager. So my cost point, my overhead in terms of my employee count was very low.
Yeah.
But I just had a self-driven, very inspired team. And it freed me up to do the other things that needed to be done.
For sure. That's awesome.
So listen to your people.
Yeah.
And more importantly, if you can find a way to have them be the advocate, so you're not the one saying why this change is needed and why it will be successful, because most people, not every employee listens to that.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. And then, you had that success there, listening to your people. And then now you've learned so much through the years, starting Me Plus Ultra. Like you said, you've just been enjoying the whole process, but how has this been different versus what you've done in the past? Is there much difference? Are you seeing some more roadblocks or obstacles that you've had to overcome now versus things you've done in the past?
All the same roadblocks.
Yeah.
Business is business, right?
Yep.
I got to learn how to sell it.
Yeah.
Right. I had to do that. I had to, there's always the capacity. You have on a new company, you have no processes. So you got to build all the processes, document it. You got to do all those things.
Yeah.
It's all the same challenges, getting clients to pay attention and pick up whether it's pick up the phone, hit the click here button, whatever we're doing online, improving engagement, whatever it might be, all the same challenges exist. The channels might be a little bit different than when I first got into business in the early 90s. Some are easy, some make it much easier, and then some just a lot more to learn. But either way, to me, the challenges are the same in business. And, with J&L, we had clients, we had Shell Oil as a client. Here's a top, maybe five company in the world. and we're sitting at dinner with them, and they're talking about the challenges they have, right? And in the back of my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, well, this is the same challenges I got at J&L Marketing. And you guys are thousands of times larger than what we're dealing with.
Right.
But we all have the same challenges. How do I find salespeople? How do I make them better? And by the way, it's not limited to salespeople. How do I find more employees? How do I retain them? How do I improve my client retention, right? How do I get more new business?
Yeah.
How do I improve the ROI from my marketing effort? I mean, it's all the same.
Yeah. Just different scale.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I was going to let you finish.
Well, I was going to say the difference here is this grind goes back to the way when I started J&L, it didn't feel like a grind. It is, but it doesn't feel like it. You know, my wife will tell me there are times I'm staying up late, and my wife will be like, hey, you know, she wasn't there in the beginning when I was, you know, when I started J&L, I said, honey, the difference between this and staying up late when I was still in the half in, half out on the J&L side is that stressed me. I was doing that because I felt I had to, which I didn't appreciate and I didn't like, and I grew to resent that. I said, I'm getting on a project here, and I'm staying up because I want to get it done. I love it.
Yeah.
I said, there's a difference. And she goes, yeah, but you love me too, so make sure you get to bed. So, you know.
For sure. So that's a little different there, but which is good. No, it's awesome to have that, like the excitement of what you're doing. And if you don't, then maybe find someone who can do the piece that you're trying to do that you're not excited about in the business, or maybe pivot a little bit to match that what you want.
You're going to go through a period where you got to get it in financial shape to be able to do that, right? And once that's happened, and we're there now on Me Plus Ultra, I'm recognizing, okay, this is taking me away from the things that are really moving the needle and really important. And plus, it's a little mundane to me. I don't need to keep doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's already started.
Yeah, it's like for me, it's like getting to the point where, like, I can trust the team to show up and do the video production side of things, upload the stuff, and the editors do their thing where I don't have to come on set or on site if I don't want to. I enjoy it. I enjoy being around that atmosphere, but I can choose not to, and they can still get it done.
Let me ask you a question, if I can ask you something.
Sure.
So you're a new entrepreneur, a couple years in, and you just described something I think every entrepreneur that's growing runs through. And so I would never have been able to do this with J&L. It requires a tremendous amount of trust in your team, either whether it's a person or a team, right?
Yep.
How did that come for you? I'm curious as to how did that develop for you to where you could finally let go?
Yeah, it was hard. There's definitely friction with it, but I would, first of all, whatever reason, my mindset was always like, you can't do this by yourself forever.
Yeah.
Like, and so from the beginning, I knew like I had to find the right people at the right times for different things. And thankfully I found them on the journey. And sure, with it, I always tell people, like, we're still small. So like our profit margin, because of that, because I'm bringing on people, like I'm not seeing a whole, like, I'm not rich. I'm not like financially, monetarily rich because I'm putting back in the business for the people working. But for me, like, that gives me more time with the kids, which makes me rich.
That's right.
Mind. And so there was still some friction with it. Like, I remember when I brought on my first guy to edit, because that's what I did not want to do. It was super. I was like super nervous because he was not in the U.S. He's outside the U.S.
Smart.
I was nervous. I was like, I don't know. And he's still with us. He's freaking amazing. Like, Godfrey, shout out to you. Appreciate you, man, if you're listening to this. And then, the other people we brought on the team, like, they just all, and that's another thing too, is when you're bringing these people on, like, they need to see the vision, especially early on. Like, they need to see the vision of the company, and they need to see you as a leader that can provide that future with it, because, business is going to have ups and downs. And when you're a small business, those ups and downs can look a lot scarier to people who don't understand. And so, like, helping them understand the vision and getting them in on that was helpful. But yeah, the friction I had was there. And so it was definitely growth for me to let that go, and then just give feedback where I could to help them improve. And it's grown a lot better, which is helpful. So
I am curious to see in the next 3 to 5 years how many more people like yourself become entrepreneurs. And I say that because of this.
mm-hmm.
You did it because you wanted to.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a have to scenario, and that's either it's going to be disastrous for some, and work out very well for others. And here's what I mean by that. I don't know how much you're paying attention to. First off, I pay no attention to news.
Yeah.
Because I don't want any bad in. However, in the industries I'm in, I do pay attention to those news, right?
Yep.
And so I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here watching Stellantis lay off all kinds of engineers.
Yep.
And what triggered this thought in my mind is what you said. Your editor is offshore.
Mm-hmm.
They replaced these engineers with offshore engineers for $53,000 a year. All right?
Yeah.
Google just laid off a ton of workers and replaced them all with offshore people.
Yep.
And here's where I'm going with this. When COVID struck, and here's what happened with Google. And it's happening across the board in a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Well, everybody started working remote, right?
Yep.
So we're working remote. That relationship, I'll get there. We're working remote, and a couple things happen. Now it's time, and the business leaders, owners, whatever it might be, depending on the size of the organization, are sitting there saying, you know what? We need to get people back in the office. The camaraderie, the collaboration, the morale, the culture of our company is shifting in a way that I don't necessarily like it. And maybe we're not as efficient, maybe we're not as productive. And so the workforce obviously would love to stay at home, right? And do that. So there's this battle, and Google finally had to come back. Elon Musk did it at Tesla. I mean, so you're doing this thing, and now what happens is when you're not working at the office, as an employer, I'm sitting here, what used to sit there and say, you know what, I'm willing to pay more because they're in office and I can see what's going on, my morale, my culture, the collaboration efforts. It's just easier for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know how good the belief was before, I have trouble managing or leading that remote workforce.
Right.
Well, now our own people have shown us that we can still do that.
Yep.
Except, well, heck, if I'm going to work remote, why am I paying you $100,000 to $150,000 when I can get somebody for $50,000?
Right.
Or $20,000. A lot of times, $24,000, right? And quite honestly, and sometimes the work ethic is stronger and better.
Right.
For me plus ultra, I have an offshore person as well that helps me. Phenomenal.
Yep.
And so I think what's going to happen is, as some of these people are laid off and or phased out somehow, they're not going to be able to just go get the next job.
Right.
And so now you have a choice. You can either get a job for a lot less, right? That probably requires you to show up every day, or you can start and do your own thing.
Yep.
And I think in 3 to 5 years, it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. That's for sure. Yeah, it's headed that way for sure. So, but man, Scott, this has been a great conversation. A lot of great insight from, someone who's been decades in entrepreneurship and business. And so I'm appreciative of your time and sharing everything you did. And for those who want to connect with you, find out more about what you do and learn from you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Well, I'm all over social. So I'm active, especially on LinkedIn, Facebook. I reactivated my Twitter account or X account, so I don't have a lot of followers there anymore, but Instagram as well. But the easiest way to reach me is probably to reach out to meplusultra.com and go there and try to connect with us.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, yeah, if anyone listening wants to, connect with Scott, learn more from him, do that. Go do that. And, he's doing a lot of great stuff and has done a lot of great things. And so, again, Scott, thank you so much for being on the Elevate Media podcast today.
Chris, I truly appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.